And for this first panel, what we are going to do is focus on some of the work that is being done as far as managing forest here in Alabama. And just can't cover it all, but just highlight a few of the things that are being done. And our first speaker is Mr. John Pirtle, and I will let him tell more about himself and his background, but I will just say that he is an expert in forestry management. He's highly respected for his knowledge of NACD, and we are very, very fortunate to have him serving as a supervisor in one of our slowwater conservation districts up in Autauga County. And I know he works throughout Alabama and is well known for his work with landowners. So I'll turn it over to you, John.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to Alabama, if only virtually. And I'm proud to have been asked to participate in this. I think it's very important. As Sarah said, I'm a supervisor with the Autauga County Soil and Water Conservation District. I have been working in the forest industry for 47 years, 43 of those a license. I have worked in forest research. I worked in industry as an industry forester. I worked with the state of Alabama Forestry Commission, where I was a county forester, a realtor, and then director of the Forest Management Division. I fought wildfires for 20 years. Pretty familiar with control wildfires. I was also the chairman of the Autauga Fire Association for 12 years. And I was fortunate.
Hey, John. John, we're having a little trouble with your audio. I'm afraid we're having a little trouble with your audio.
I don't know.
Try it now.
Do I get close?
Not sure what's causing.
Sure.
I don't know what to do. I got you turned on and my mic turned on.
Sounds like it's a little better. Why don't you go ahead from there? It might be when you're leaning forward, that's better.
I don't know what y'all heard, but anyway, I've been forestry and wildlife for many years. I've also been involved in water quality issues because I am chairman of the Autauga Water Authority, which we provide water to several thousand. I was also an incident commander with the state of Alabama as the hurricane response team leader. So I'm familiar with wind on this thing too. So, but are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing you better now that the camera is disabled. That works better. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as a supervisor with the Autauga County Soil and Water Conservation District, we assist landowners in providing cost share funds for to do dry burns, which burning standing timber and preparing sites for reforestation. We work very closely with our sister agency, the NRCS, and also the Alabama Extension Service and the Autauga County Forest and Wildlife Stewardship Council. And education is one of our themes. We work with our partners to provide seminars and landowner tours to educate landowners on the benefit of using fire as a management tool. I am retired from the state, and I own my own forest consulting company. We do quite a bit of fire burns each year, thousands. But we try to train landowners in the for several reasons. It enhances their wildlife habitat, and that's very important to a lot of our landowners. It controls your competing vegetation. It controls invasive plants. As far as wildfire, it reduces the fuel loading on the forest stand. So in case a wildfire does occur, it shouldn't be as damaging. We provide funds for landowners to put in permanent fire breaks. So if a fire gets off of their zoning owners, maybe it doesn't go on to them. You know, fire may be misunderstood by a lot of people, and our job is to try to explain prescribed fire is good fire, wildfire is bad fire. And one of the things we've been really involved in is the wildland urban interface, where we try to train landowners to make their homes in the woods fire safe. As a firefighter myself, I have witnessed devastating fires burning people's property where they did not have green space between their forest land and their homes. I've had grown men sitting in my pickup truck crying because their shop were down because they didn't control. They had their wood pile right up behind their shops. So with us working with the forest owners who live out in the forest, teaching them to protect their property is very important. I have noticed a change in the climate. We keep talking about climate change. We get about the same amount of rain per year, but we get it at different times of the year than we used to get it. We have long drought periods, which really goes to enhancing the dam wildfires. So we also work with the RC&D Council. RC&D Council provides a good bit of funding for us. And we also work with our stewardship programs. I am a tree farmer, a treasure forest landowner, a stewardship forest landowner. I own my own forest land. And I know Sabra and some others are going to talk about some storm damage. I personally have been hit this year with a hurricane, which damaged my house and over 100 trees on my property. And then in March, I got hit with a tornado, which destroyed my woodworking shop and some more trees. So I think we do also have a video we may show of one of my drones taking footage of a client of mine that has about $2 million worth of timber laying on the ground from a tornado in March. So I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Our Soil and Water Conservation District is very active. Our chairman is Jack Wadsworth. I don't know if any of you guys know Jack Wadsworth. I think he's in his 47th year of being active in conservation service. He is a great leader. You know, as Sabra said, Alabama is one of the leaders in the forest industry, and our county has 73% of its land is forest land. So it's a very high priority in our funding for landowners to assist forest landowners in Autauga County. I'll be glad to take any questions.
And we can go through all three of the speakers and then have a little time for questions at the end. Let me see, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and show the video, which John mentioned. I can find it. Let's see. Here we go. Is that showing? Okay. And John, if you could maybe give us a little highlight of what this is. We'll see, John's still muted, but this is actually tornado damage in Bibb County, Alabama, fairly recent. And if you can see, there you go, John, you're off now, you can speak.
Okay, I was just going to state we had a series of devastating tornado events in March. And this piece of property I've been managing for years, and it's a prime example of a landowner kind of letting the timber get too old. The timber was over 100 years old. We had just completed a sale in January of 94 acres that we brought in $475,000. And so this is 400 acres more of damage. So just doing the math, we're looking at it close to a couple $1 million laying on the ground. We're having a great difficulty getting salvaged because loggers don't like to cut in areas like this. It's dangerous. And also there's a lot of damage out there. Even the Forest Service close to this had a large area that was destroyed. So in our discussions with the winds, this is what a tornado can do to a landowner. And it's pretty devastating.
Thank you, John. And just kind of leading into our next speaker with this video, John talked some about fire and prescribed fire, and when we were looking at the summit last year, that seemed to be the focus, but then it was expanded to wind and water as well. And as you can see, I know throughout the southeastern states, but we've had a pretty rough season the past couple of years, or storm seasons, and this type of damage is something that we have to deal with. And our next speaker is going to be Kathy Gocher. And Kathy is the senior, let's see, what is our title? She's our senior conservationist at the Alabama Soil and Water Conservation Committee. Also, extremely experienced expert. This is actually her retired career. But we're very thankful to have her on board, and she's got a lot of experience dealing with wind and other damage, and working with NACD and other partners in helping landowners to recover from these types of events. So with that, I will stop sharing the screen and turn it over to Kathy so we can get her presentation started.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. Can you see it? Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Gocher, and I'm the Senior Conservationist for the Alabama Soil and Water Conservation Committee. Well, like Saber said, I'm retired. This is my second career. Retired from USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service in December of 2019. Had 32 years of experience with them. I started my career as a soil conservation technician, worked my way up to a district conservationist. But today I want to talk to you about the historic tornado outbreak that was on April 27, 2011. At that time, I was stationed in the northwest corner of Alabama in Lawrence County. And this historic storm event caused tremendous devastation, loss of life, loss of homes, loss of entire farms, and much storm debris was blown into the creeks and streams. On the 26th of April, a lot of the meteorologists was already talking about a major system that was developing and was going to happen around the 27th of April. And when that evening on the 26th, as I went to bed, I had an uneasy feeling. And when I woke up the next morning, I found The weather was already unsettled in North Alabama, and it was in a high risk area, mostly high risk, and then the rest of the state had a moderate risk. And these high risk outlooks only happen a few days a year, so it's not a common pattern for here. So with that, I want to give you a few facts about the April 27th, 2011 tornado. There were 219 tornadoes confirmed in 14 states, causing 324 fatalities, and 238 of those fatalities were in Alabama. There were 62 tornadoes in Alabama that day. 39 of them were in North Alabama. The tornado struck was, there was 2 of those EF5 tornadoes. This is the actual picture of the EF5 tornado that come through North Alabama. The storm that began near Hamilton, Alabama and Marion County stayed on the ground for 130 miles. And this is a picture of that tornado, leveling Hackleburg and hitting more than 700 homes in Limestone County, another 300 in Madison County. And this tornado killed as many as 72 people and injured over 145 along its path. The other EF5 tornado was in northeast Alabama in DeKalb County. And that tornado stayed on the ground almost 34 miles and killed 26 people. And you can also see that the damage from this storm, this tornado event, was $1.29 billion, which was the costliest tornado in U.S. history. Now to give you a map from the National Weather Service for Alabama showing the historic tornado outbreak. Notice the purple lines that are EF5 on this screen. This here is the Hamilton or Hackleburg tornado we were talking about just a minute ago, where it set down and went across Marion, Franklin, Lawrence, part of Morgan County, Limestone, Madison, and continued into Tennessee. Right in here was a Wrangler jean plant that made blue jeans. Blue jeans were found in Lawrence County here on the county line. Some of the farmers picked up pickup truck loads of jeans for weeks, just trying to get the fields cleaned up so they could produce a crop. As that day progressed, and it was earlier in the day, we were at the NRCS office. Remember, I had my NRCS hat on that day. Our staff, we went home early so we could get in our safe places. But then as the tornadoes went through the county, I started receiving phone calls. Some of our farmers had damage to their homes, or either had lots of damage to their property, even lost some of their homes. This is the pictures that I started receiving. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We had neighborhoods, schools, churches, and businesses were destroyed or damaged. Old homes were gone or even picked up off the foundations and set back down. This is one of my farmers' homes that I was working with at the time the tornado came through. He had just left, received a phone call and told him that he needed to leave, that it was a big storm coming his way. He left, and when he came back, this is what he saw. And then this is the inside of his home that he found. Things were just in dismay. And then he looked out the back, what was the window of the house, looking out his back window, and all he could see was a path of destruction. Then he looks out his other window, and this was his equipment barn with a dry stack composter behind it. It was all gone. He looks out the window on the other end of the house. This was his poultry operation. There were 6 poultry houses here, and this is what he saw. This is a closer view of the chickens from the chicken house. Now, normally during a time of disaster for NRCS, we're in a recovery mode, but this time NRCS was in a response mode providing assistance with burial sites for poultry. NRCS worked closely with the Alabama Department of Ag and Industries to locate burial sites for over 3 million poultry during this time. Like I said, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is the back of that guy's field. All you can see is devastation. Then he looks a little closer and here's the tin and metal from his chicken houses, his shops, his outer buildings. And then here he finds one of his grain bins from his poultry operation. It was a devastating storm. And this was his equipment shed when he got a little closer on the backside. Just things are everywhere. And on his property also was 2 of these Tennessee Valley Authority transmission lines. They were damaged and the power was down. Power grid was down for several days. Some people were out of power for weeks. He looks a little closer around a creek that runs beside his house. You notice right here, there is 2 vehicles in the creek that the tornado picked up from somewhere and sat in this creek. Then one of the major problems in dealing with the aftermath of the tornado was debris in the streams. The debris clogged many streams. It's a threat to life and property. There are problems with flooding, sedimentation, fish habitat, and the likes. Now to give you a little closer view of where I was at in Lawrence County, this is some of the facts just to kind of give you an idea. There's approximately 243,840 acres of farmland in Lawrence County. There's 23 square miles of water, approximately 1,500 farms. 45% of that land is cropland, 26% is pasture land, 24% was woodland, and 5% was considered other. And that's according to the 2011 census. I want you to notice on the farm land use, we have wheat listed here. Lawrence County ranked 4th in the state. But when this storm came through, it sucked the wheat grain heads out of the wheat. So when the farmers go out and check their wheat, there was nothing in those seed heads. It's just nothing there. So the farmers went from producing 100 bushels of wheat to the acre to 10 bushels to the acre. And then also the poultry and broilers and pullets Lawrence County ranked 6th and 7th. Remember, there was a lot of burial sites that had to be located during this time. Then you asked about the district and what the Soil and Water Conservation District supervisors and NRCS were partners. We communicated, that was the key. There was a communication link that we linked up to. And we partnered with several different agencies. We participated as a group in 27 meetings with the local EMA, FEMA, the Lawrence County Commissioners, Lawrence County Road Department, Corps of Engineers, Alabama Cooperative Extension System, and Farm Service Agency. When we met those 27 times, we were talking about the needs for the county, the needs of the producers, the needs of the landowners. And then once we built this partnership, we participated for several weeks in weekly briefings with the local disaster agencies. And by the time it was over, we worked with 25 different sponsors, city and counties. This was statewide, with 126 damage survey reports completed and approved for almost $8 million for estimated construction cost. In Lawrence County, the damage surveys report requested $915,000 through the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. We developed a lot of working relationships. And one of those working relationships and partners was with the Cattlemen's Association. We partnered with Lawrence County and Winston County Cattlemen's Association to distribute fencing material to this tornado disaster victims. The landowners still had some cattle. Some of the cattle were missing. They could account for them. But the ones that did have cattle, their perimeter fencing were gone. So they had a dire need, urgent need at the time. We worked with USDA staff, NRCS state office staff, to discuss innovative solutions to resolve tornado damage issues on farms statewide. NRCS was able to offer disaster funding through the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, or EQIP. The landowners could apply for financial assistance at the local office. NRCS was granted special permission to have perimeter fencing and clearing and snagging added to the conservation practice list for a special disaster program sign up. And it was the Soil and Water Conservation District supervisors and the local NRCS local work groups working together to get this put together. We were also part of helping develop the ranking criteria for this program, for that special sign up. This is the clearing and snagging standard, practice standard 326. It's a job sheet that was developed especially for this tornado event to clear and snag new storm damage from the streams. They also got concurrence for the clearing and snagging practice with the Fish and Wildlife and the Corps of Engineers to make sure that nothing would be adversely affected the federally listed species or critical habitat occurring within these inland streams, as long as that job sheet was followed. So we held a special sign up for the disaster. And in Lawrence County, that resulted in 18 contracts totaling $979,911. And the conservation practices that we install mostly for waste storage facilities, animal mortality facility, composting facilities, and the clearing and snagging. That was just in Lawrence County. On a statewide note, you can see the numbers. Waste storage facility, approximately 272,000. Animal mortality facilities, 15,000. Composting facilities, approximately 127,000. And clearing and snagging, $1,827,000 for just clearing and snagging. And you want to know the value of your soil and water conservation districts? The value of these 5 guys that stood beside me. We worked through the problem. We communicated multiple times daily with these 5 guys from the Lawrence County Soil and Water Conservation District. And you want to know what their value is? Well, here's my perspective. It's priceless. These were the best 5 guys I could have even asked for to help with communicating with the local farmers, the local landowners, all the way up to the state office folks, the legislators, what we needed, they were there. At least one of them was there in every aspect of helping us through this event. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the effects related to a tornado and the role of soil and water conservation districts played due to this historic tornado outbreak. And here's my contact information. Feel free to contact me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. As I said, we'll reserve questions to the end. We'll have actually the 3 speakers in a panel asking or able to answer questions at that time. But next, I will introduce Charles Holmes, who has already introduced himself a little bit, but he can tell you more about his background in forestry management and what he's going to talk about as far as practices in Perry County and what he has has participated in as a soil and water conservation district supervisor there as a property owner. And also to mention, Charles is the chairman of our Alabama Soil and Water Conservation Committee. So he has quite a bit of knowledge on all of Alabama's conservation programs, but particularly is one of our experts in forestry management. So Charles, I'll turn it over to you.
Sutton, thank you so much. I'm going to give a little history lesson because everybody needs to remember from where they came. I happen to live on a farm that my family has farmed for 202 years. Our first farm plan, I still have it. It's 1937. That original farm plan included forestry. It included wildlife. It included terrace work. And we also were able to do some erosion control with this new plant that had come from Japan called kudzu. And we planted crowns of kudzu, and it's still with us, I promise you. It's a nuisance in a way, but it did help with soil erosion. One of the other things that I go back to the 37, because in the 30s, all throughout the South, we burned our forest. It was a normal practice. You burned the forest in the wintertime while your livestock was in the fields gleaning the crop residue and everything. And then when it was time to plant your crops, you had burned off your forest, you had grass coming up in your forest, and your wildlife was moved. I mean, your cattle and pigs and whatever were moved into the forest. It was a normal practice in the South, and it went on about the time, I guess it was. Well, I know it was through the 30s and into the 40s, and then I think a lot of people got a misconception of Smokey Bear, and Smokey Bear was a wonderful thing, and it was to prevent wildfire. It was not to prevent controlled burns in farmlands and in timberlands or woodlots. All people in the South pretty much had woodlots, and like I said, that was a place that the livestock went when you were working your fields with crops. But so from say the 40s sometime until 1993. Our farm didn't burn anymore. And we had opened up a pay hunting lodge, and we were trying to open up the woods and give the wildlife, the turkeys and the deer, a better habitat. And we decided that we would start doing controlled burn. So I called my Alabama Forestry district forester, and I said, "Will you come help me?" And he said, "Well, I don't have time to come help you, but you light the fire, and if you get in trouble, just call me." So, so that was my first experience with fire, and everybody told me I was crazy. But after the second year of doing some controlled burns, and they saw the benefits of this fire, which a lot of people hadn't seen, because, like I said, we pretty much quit doing it back in the 30s and 40s. But it's been a wonderful tool for us. And I did probably between 300 and 1,000 acres a year during that time. And then in 2004, Ivan came through, a hurricane. Well, we had over 60,000 board feet of timber laid on the ground. NRCS came up with a plan, and it was an EWP plan, but it was to remove debris out of the forest. And it was a wonderful program. And that year was the only year that I know of that it went on. But we were able to put fire lanes and fire breaks throughout our property. And from that time on, I started burning, and I try to burn around 1,000 acres a year. And I move it around about every 3 years, and I really probably ought to be doing it about every 2 years. But we're able to bring farmers and children to our woods and show them the benefits of fire and how it helps the environment. And as I said earlier, you know, the clean water you drink, most of it comes out of your woods, and it percolates down into your aquifers, and that's where your drinking water comes from. And we need to be telling people this, that you know, somebody said something about carbon sequestration, and you know, we've been carbon neutral forever, and it sort of bugs me to look at people like Amazon and Google and even Alabama Power Company, for that matter. They buy carbon credits, and they can say that they're good stewards of the land. But the good stewards are the people that are actually on the land. That's just a good feel good for them. But that's just a pet peeve of mine. I had to say that. And the other thing that we do, and we've been doing this for about 6 years, is having classroom in the forest for all the 5th and 6th graders in our area. And there are a lot of conservation districts that are doing this. I think John Purtle talked about it in Autauga County. I know it's going on in Marengo County, Bibb County, Erie County. A lot of counties do that. And a lot of these kids, you would just be surprised at going into rural areas, which most of Alabama I consider pretty much rural, that have never been in a forest. They're worried about the bugs. They're worried about the first year that I did it, it was the school teachers were worse than the children. But they asked me if I had bugs, and I said, yeah, we have bugs. And she said, well, what do you do about them? And I says, well, you just live with them. And she said, well, can we spray? And I said, well, if you want to spray your children, you can spray them. But we got bugs, we got snakes, we got all kind of different things. But anyway, they have a wonderful time. And the Alabama Forestry Commission comes out, and they bring the fire equipment, and they see bulldozers and all of that different stuff that NRCS brings out. We'll do soil samples and make a soil profile and stuff like that. We'll have Extension Service come out, and we do the furs and the critters, and they put on a good presentation like that. We've also had the fisheries come out and bring mussels and different types of fish that they work on in the National Fish Lab here in Perry County. I mean, it's just stuff that children just don't see, and that's all done through our conservation district, and we enjoy doing stuff like that because it was just, like I said, it's just, you think people know and have seen these things, but they really hadn't, and it's sort of shocking. And the teachers are just as bad as the kids. I mean, they learn a whole lot when they come also. You know, one of the things that I'm very proud of with my family, and it's not Charles, it's the whole family. But we practice what we preach, and you know, we've been blessed that I've been a supervisor since 1984, and you know, my family has received the National Wildlife Award, the Governor's Award. That's the highest award that they give for conservation. We've received that award. The Environmental Stewardship Award from the Cattlemen's Association, we received that award. our conservation district was a national earth team winner. We won the national earth team. Those 5 supervisors here in Perry County, they work and they do things. And then the last award that our family was had an honor of receiving was the Helene Mosley Award, and that's the highest award that the forestry community gives to a landowner, and it's it encompasses the wildlife, and it encompasses forest management practices and everything, and we were just all very pleased to have been able to receive those awards. But it's easy to talk about things, but if you don't practice things and people don't recognize you for practicing things, maybe you aren't doing enough. All right, that's pretty much all I got to say. Now I can ramble now, but but if you want to take some questions and talk about other things, and I'll be glad to answer anything about the practices that we do on our farm, because I tried to keep it with forestry. We're one of the other things that I didn't mention is in 1999. There were no longleaf pines in Perry County except maybe a little bit in the national forest. And I decided that we were going to have some longleaf pines. So I planted 500 acres of longleaf pine. They're a little over 20 years old now. We run silver pasture practices. We've got cows running in the woods. We've got sheep and goats running in the woods. We're raking pine straw. We're trying to keep from putting chemical on the ground for the pine straw, using the animals to glean the grass and everything. And so this is something different that most people hadn't seen, and it's worked very well for us. But I'm a firm believer. When I first went on the one of the first places we went when I went on the forestry committee was out to the agroforestry substation in Nebraska, and have always been a firm believer in agroforestry and silver pasture and that, because a lot of the people that are, especially the underserved people and the small acreage people, that's something that they can plant trees and they can still grow crops in between the rows, or they can have livestock or something like that. And that's a wonderful practice, and something that I think we need to keep working in partnerships with all of our different agencies in that practice, because it is a wonderful way. I do want to say one thing, and it does have to do with trees. In 1998, I was getting $70 to $90 a ton for my trees stumpage, and today I get $30 and $40 a ton. But I just went and bought a 1x8, 8 foot long, and I paid $18 for that board yesterday. Something's bad wrong. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you to all of our panelists today, and I will turn it over to Ann to facilitate a Q&A session for a few minutes. And Ann?
Very good. Thank you very much. Those were some great presentations. I enjoyed every one of them, and I developed some questions along the way. I don't see any questions in chat, but I encourage you, if you have any, to please go ahead and add those in. And while we're waiting on those, I will kick off with mine. So John, I was really, I guess I wasn't surprised about the drone footage with the damage. I've seen several of those in my career. However, to actually manage that on, you know, that level of devastation on the land, you talked about the dangerous conditions of loggers, and the salvage is extremely dangerous. I've had friends that have gotten hit with, you know, trees falling while they were working on other ones. And so it's something very serious. Do you see adequate resources to help with folks being in there, considering how dangerous it is? Or what are you able to put together to take care of that?
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Most producers' liability insurance does not allow them to actually use a chainsaw. So that is a big hindrance when we're trying to salvage this stuff. They can't use their cut-down machine because the trees are laying on the side and the cut-down machine don't turn sideways. So the producers that we have got on that site have had to go to their liability insurance companies and increase their coverage to allow for them to go in there with the chainsaws. And it's very dangerous. They have to crawl over debris to get to the stump area of the tree and actually cut it off that way. And then they try to maneuver the skidder to that tree to drag it back to the ramp to limit and put it on the truck. The cost of the logging operation is very high, so therefore the landowner is getting very little for the stumpage because a crew that normally averages 45 to 50 loads a day is getting 3 or 4 loads. So it's very difficult to convince a logger to take on salvage. And it's going to take a long time to salvage that piece of property. However, those hardwood trees they'll live for a long time. And so when one producer gets really tired and says, I can't do this anymore, maybe we can talk another one to go in there, but we're never going to get the value that was standing harvested for the landowner. Hopefully we can get it cleaned up enough to go in there and do some site prep work and get it planted, reforested back.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions on what an action might be? Is there, you know, something that, you know, maybe communicating with insurance companies and looking at this holistically? I mean, this isn't just you know, an Alabama issue, but it's also occurring in Georgia and Florida. I saw Hurricane Michael damage in a lot of the, you know, northern parts of Florida. So is that something that might be helpful for producers in timber growth?
There are companies that will insure your forest land. However, the premiums are pretty high, and the odds of the average landowner getting hit with hurricane or tornado generally outweighs the benefits of having the insurance. In other words, most landowners think it's not going to happen to me. Even the timber companies, the company that bought that $475,000 sale does not have insurance. Now, one thing we can do for the landowner is that we have already inventoried that piece of property, so we know the estimated timber value on that property. Once we finish the salvage efforts and we know how many tons and the value that we got off of it, we'll take that difference, provide a document to the landowner to be able to claim it on the federal income tax as a loss. But really, I mean, you know, you got to have a pretty good annual income to claim $2 million worth of timber loss off of it. So,
Okay.
to answer your question, I just wish there was a cheaper insurance out there, and whether we can, some of these storms, working hurricanes in the past, I've had landowners talking to me over the telephone, and they're in tears because they've been leaving this timber for their grandchildren's college education. And the best thing I could tell people is that when your timber gets mature, it might be better for you to harvest that timber, start it over, and put that money in some other kind of investment that tornadoes or hurricanes can't take it away from you. You
Right.
can let your timber get too old.
John, I may have lost you, but no, I completely understand what you're saying. I grew up on 80 acres of trees in rural Oregon, and they may be different species, but the same thing applies when we had two, over 100,000 acre fires coming down at it, and the point where they were supposed to merge was my mother's place. I tell you, it makes you think about, I wish my son, we had a 40-year midlife crisis plan for my son to harvest trees that we had planted. And I was worried that that was going to go up. And, you don't know about these disasters and the events or if they're going to happen to you, but there is certainly a complacency in everywhere you look, whether it's a fire or tornado or hurricane, is that it's not going to happen to you. So I appreciate what you're saying. And I definitely want to try to, continue the conversation. The insurance companies, 20 years ago, when we talked to them about insurance and wildfire, all of a sudden the public utilities or the utilities have a direct impact on the insurance industry and what's going on right now. So it may just be a precursor to what's in the future. And maybe there are solutions that we can learn from some of the things that are happening there with how to help you and help the, the folks in the Southeast. I do have a question in the chat, and so I'll move to that. Thank you so much, John. Arlene Culpepper, thank you for your question. How are increasing weather issues being addressed with farmers before they take place, such as tornadoes, hurricane, floods? Who would like to take that? Kathy, are you still with us? I know you were talking a bit about the different events and with the poultry, and I also thought about different assignments and such where there were diseases with poultry farms. And, I know that they've taken some steps to try to reduce that type of impact, but with yours and your example, what, in addition to that question, what can you do ahead of time before another event?
Well, you can try to do some planning and get with your local NRCS or soil and water staff and go ahead and identify those burial sites in case you have a catastrophic event with your poultry. And then, have that readily available. Just don't go stick that in a file drawer back behind everything. Have that where you can get to it. Have it as a contingency plan if something happens. And then also have a list of emergency phone numbers that where you could call and let people know, like your integrator or the Department of Ag and Industries, your local USDA offices or Soil and Water Conservation District offices. That's just a few of the things that we had worked on and have worked on since that 2011 tornado, so we wouldn't get caught off guard. I mean, it was really an emotional day for us. The particular producer, I showed you his house a minute ago. I went out to visit him, and him standing there crying, and he's lost everything. And I just stood there and cried with him. That's all I knew to do. And so it's not just financial, it's the emotional side of it too.
Definitely. The plan thing that you talked about, Kathy, and having it on the shelf, and I've seen that so many times. We can, even listen on here and listen to what you're saying, and we shut off the Zoom and we still don't have a plan. Even though we heard the really good advice you just gave us, we get back into our day-to-day routines and we don't have it until we need it. And even something, that's certainly not simple, but often occurs is when you're having to move livestock in a hurry, or if you're you know, you have that plan, that contingency plan that you're talking about. When you talked about safe places, we think about, well, we've got a place to go safe. We don't always have that plan for our animals. And so any suggestions on what, you know, you might be able to, you know, help with suggestions on more the animal side of things and plans?
No, it's like you said, it's hard to plan for that. I know we had producers because of that event that lost their perimeter fencing and animals were roaming, or, you know, there's even animals that weren't accounted for. They couldn't find them, but I don't really know a good solution to that, or a good answer to that question.
And if I may just add one thing, and I don't know if our weather events are increasing or if we're just in another cycle, but we certainly have had our bad share here in the Southeast over the past couple of years. But I think we'll get into some discussions tomorrow with some of the other partner agencies like FEMA. And although we can't really prevent tornadoes from happening, but with hurricanes and flooding, there are some measures that I know can take place, and such as shoreline stabilization and protection, but some resiliency, especially in our coastal areas, some resiliency projects and things that have been undertaken to try to at least minimize some impacts to not just forestry, but all landowners, including both urban and rural. So I don't know that we can really address those issues, but we're certainly trying to be more resilient in protecting property owners from the damage.
Sabre, you're absolutely right. And the FEMA stuff that we'll cover tomorrow, as well as NFPA and some of the fire adapted communities programs, you know, are really good for preparedness. I have to say, I mean, conservation districts are really the restoration go-to organizations. I really believe that. You're local in the communities where the event's happening, they very well are happening on your land as well. So in addition to helping your neighbor, you are also suffering loss. You know, I saw that with the ice storms, and, you know, but I've also seen where there's, because you have this increase in events, you're all getting really good at figuring out how to clean up that debris. I just gotta say, I've never seen anything so organized in the West. I'm just telling you, you know, when I saw it in Oklahoma City and the different coverage from that, I was super impressed that, you know, there's already grants in different organizations for debris cleanup. There was already set days of the week when you bring it. The programs were really good. So I look at it though on the larger scale where I could see there was need for more coordination, and that was with some of the agencies, such as the parks and such that people tend to go to. So I have another question in the chat from Ashley, and this is to you, Charles. Can you please talk about how others in your area have increased the use of prescribed fire over time? And what do you think is the most effective method to encourage the use of fire that you've seen? And I got you on mute, so I'm sorry. Can you unmute, please? There you go. Still on mute, Mark.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes.
Okay. It doesn't stay on the bottom of this tablet, so I have to play with it. That's what I'm doing. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. But Mike's my go-to man anyway. So.
I know, mine too. Thank goodness for him.
you know, and John Pirtle, I wish that we could have gotten his audio a whole lot better, because he is really a person that could talk more about this. But it's what I've seen in my area is, once I started doing it, because I was the only one doing it. I mean, there just weren't people. I mean, Alabama Forestry Commission would come in and do site prep burns and stuff like that. But as far as burning woods for wildlife benefit and for just making it a healthy forest and removing some of the debris in case you did have a fire, Another thing I found out about this that I try to tell the landowners about is pest control.
Oh, yeah.
And I have had very little pine beetle damage since I started burning. And I don't know why that is, but people seeing you burn and seeing that what you do tends to get more people to do it. Like right now, I've got about 4 or 5 people in my area that 5 years ago weren't burning, and they're burning now. But you know, they see somebody doing it, and then they get a little bit more comfortable. And like I said, first time I burned in 1993, I was scared. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, and but it worked out. And I had a perfect place to start. I had a creek on both sides of it, and I was very careful. I always keep a one of the things that I have that sort of worries me with some of the other people is that I have equipment, and I have a bulldozer that I have with me, or I have a skidder that's with me, and then I use those little 4-wheelers like I showed you with the 25-gallon water tanks on them, and there are 1 or 2 of them going around all the time while I'm burning and can put out a fire. So I think just seeing it is the thing that's making everything work better.
No, Charles, I appreciate your talking about that, because I really have a lot of respect for folks that feel comfortable being able to use fire as a tool. And, you know, that's one of my favorite things to do. I'm helping a friend out, you know, burning piles and stuff from all the ice storm and the damage in you know, outside of Oregon City just this weekend. But he's got an excavator there and is ready with a hose and feels really safe. And, you know, watching that in, you know, with the Osage tribe in Oklahoma, and how they're really doing some large acreages and restoring the land. Y'all can keep the snakes you got there. I just tell you that right off the top of my head. I mean, that's the serious stuff. If it gets rid of some of those, I know they're doing good things and killing and eating some of those stuff that we don't want out there. But you know what? So you're exactly right. Maybe that's the front we need to get for others to keep using, you know, prescribed fire, is that it cuts down on that pest stuff. I don't know anybody out there that doesn't want to have those less in their area. Gary Wood, you just put in there, can I address the prescribed fire? Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's actually feeding into some of what I was going to cover tomorrow. But you know, leading by example, and like I had said before, you know, the folks with the conservation districts are the ones that everybody's got their eyes on to see what they're doing and how they're doing it. A couple of ideas, you know, if you've got a group of landowners, and like Charles was saying, you know, once he started, he got others involved, and they saw the benefits and wanted to start doing that. And one of the things that we've really been pushing to try to encourage across the Southeast is for forming local prescribed burn associations. And what it is just a group of landowners that come together with an interest, you know, for prescribed burning, whether it be for lessening the risk of wildfire or burning for wildlife benefits or other ecosystem, you know, services. But getting that group of landowners together, and you help one another learn how to do that burning. And then also your state prescribed fire councils, you know, is another good tool for learning and being able to share information. One of the best things that I think, you know, if you can do is having demonstration sites. If you've got some areas where you can show people the benefits of burning and show what it leads to, then having those demonstration areas that you maintain and burn periodically every couple of years that you can bring groups out to, or either have video footage of, or do a PowerPoint on for a presentation for a group, and then let them go and look and see firsthand. One of the other things that's been done very successfully across our region and is expanding and growing is having fire festivals, prescribed fire festivals. The Nature Conservancy has been real good at kicking this off and partnering and collaborating with other local groups to do this. And for instance, in Wilmington, North Carolina, there was a wildfire there on a city park several years ago that threatened multiple structures. And you know, working with the local fire department, the local leaders, and with the local state forest service there, they decided that they wanted to try to start doing prescribed burning inside this city park. And so, you know, it caught a little bit of flack, but they taught and educated, they got it done, and they showed people it could be done safely. And this led to forming a fire festival. It's called Fire in the Pines. And, you know, one of the neatest things was when you saw the mayor for the city of Wilmington with a drip torch in his hand, stringing fire, you know, starting and lighting the initial fire. And then on top of that, you see the mayor for the city of Wilmington pushing a young lady who was earned the title of Miss Wheelchair USA. And she's got a drip torch hanging off the side of the you know, and going and pushing there in the wheelchair. It has a very positive impact. And they expanded it into outreach and into the schools because they knew there was a certain population of kids that weren't able to go with their families to a festival like this. And now that particular event is one of the largest festivals in that whole region. So a lot of different ways to do things there. I'm gonna put a link in the chat for some educational resources that you heard me talk about, where we did those prescribed fire infographics. And reach out to your state forestry folks and get with their communication folks, and they can help you with those and talk about them, and make it even have it where you can put some of your local logos on those as well to use them. But, you know, prescribed burn associations, do learn and burn field days. Some of our extension folks have been working very closely and have conducted learn to burn seminars where they have folks out on the ground and actually conduct and do a prescribed burn. And, you know, those are some ways I think you can increase and get more of the folks involved in prescribed fire and get them more comfortable with it.
Sounds good, Gary. Thank you so much. Any other questions for folks on this panel? Charles?
Ann, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, one of the other things that conservation districts can certainly do, and all these 5 supervisors that sit there, they set their priorities in their counties. And the ones that have a lot of woodland areas, that priority could be putting in fire lanes and putting in conservation practices that would help you do those burns and do them safely, having the ability to control that fire within the area that you want to control it. And you know, it might just be a fire plow through, or either like some of the pictures that I showed you that when we were burning the other day, you noticed that there was probably 30 to 50 foot of a grassed fire break that was there. And it's easy just to take a tractor with a little disc and knock you out of an area and then start setting your backfire right there. And it sure makes it easier, and it makes people more comfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, when you got a little buffer area, that you don't have to. Yeah. But that's something that conservation districts can do. and that's a way that they can make their forest safer and protect the forest also.
Mhm. Oh, that's a really good point, Charles. Thank you for sharing that. I know there's a lot of talk about fuel breaks and, and doing a disc line around the house. Sometimes people forget to do it around their barns and they end up losing their equipment. And I know tomorrow we'll also hear from Frank Riley and hear about Fire on the Farm, a really successful program that they've used in Georgia. So I'm super excited about that. Any other questions for this panel? Any other comments from the panelists if you'd like to share? All right, not hearing any, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this panel. Thank you very much to the speakers, and I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to hearing some of it again, actually, with it being recorded. And if y'all have any type of links, I see that Gary Woods put his southernforest.org link in there into the chat. Please go ahead and do that. And then one of the things other projects that I'm working on with the National Association of Conservation Districts is a desk guide to help conservation districts learn about cohesive strategy. And I want to have as many resources and tips and tools that I can get from you folks. So if you don't put them in the chat or you want to email them to me, my email address is on the bottom of the agenda that was sent out. That information, as well as bios for all the speakers, are on the NACD event webpage. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. We're going to go into talking about kind of the actions that people talked about. I think increasing the information on prescribed fire is definitely one of those key actions. Actions that were identified in the presentation I've collected, and I will also be putting those into this desk guide, but also developing what we've called a call to action. And back at the beginning, when the cohesive strategy was developed and those, Emmetsburg 13 folks pulled together what really needed to happen with implementing the cohesive strategy, was that it was not going to be a one agency solve the problem. Everybody needed to work together. And so even at that point, we identified the need for increased resources. And so in this desk guide, we'll also have actions and resources available to conservation districts to help spread the news or to share, something and not recreate the wheel. I think it's a great network, and I look forward to including a lot of information from this Southeast Summit into that document, and that this will be recorded and available online. Another action that I heard was about partnerships, and Charles and others, really talked a lot about how you reached out, like the Cattlemen's Association, what Kathy talked about. That's not necessarily one group that you work with on a day-to-day basis, but they have a lot of resources available to help you and you as well to help them. That communication link, again, to the landowners or the cattle producers, that's something very strong that you can, if you don't have that established, you can build that to make it very strong and really help your communities and with recovery of any type of event. If there's funding that comes through, you have that relationship and can work with them. Another one, there's definitely some information from the Weather Service that was in Kathy's presentation that I think is really important, that all sorts of questions come to what's happening with climate. The more that we can educate ourselves on the websites or the information that you can get, I think the better off we are. I would advocate that we not depend on the internet all the time, though. And that when I've witnessed a lot of the different, wind events or ice storms in the South, there was some power. And so you're hoping to try to find a place to charge your cell phone so you can get online and see what the weather is and what's coming at you. Unfortunately, not everybody's prepared. And we'll hear more from Gary Wood tomorrow about the non-traditional landowners. So they're not necessarily people that grew up in the Southeast and know the culture and the history of how to deal with those types of events coming through. I definitely need to do a little bit more homework, and probably will be reaching out to folks about the salvage that we heard about from John, and I would like to explore that a little bit. And as we move into the final section of this agenda for today, and this round robin of highlighting what conservation districts are doing, I urge you to maybe touch on some of these actions and things, so that if there's something that's working in your neighborhood or in your district, please share it with us, talk with us about it. I really want for this next section to be a conversation. And so I'm just gonna, if you're familiar with unmuting yourself, I will try to make a list of who's wanting to talk and just go from there. If I don't see a hand up or don't see someone, I will call on some folks that I don't necessarily know. But with that, any particular questions or folks that want to share what they're doing?
Kathy?
I have one more comment I'd like to make. Going back to one of my slides, I was showing that the clearing and snagging storm debris practice standard, that was developed especially for that tornado event. And that come from working with our local producers, farmers, requesting help or assistance to our Soil and Water Conservation District boards, to our local agencies, all the way up to our state leadership. And I think if you have good leadership, you can have a great outcome like we did with this clearing and snagging standard that was developed. And I'll tell you now that the leadership at that time for NRCS in Alabama was Dr. Puckett, and he was very instrumental in looking for innovative ways to help our local victims of this tornado to try to prevent flood or sedimentation or whatever problems that we might have down the road. So I like to give him a shout out for his leadership during this time with helping us with that, developing that standard and getting it approved nationally to be included in the clearing and snagging in the conservation practices. And also the perimeter fencing was included, and that was not a normal practice for us, but it was included in that sign up.
That's good. I appreciate those comments, Kathy. And I saw a hand up from Kayla Mitchell. Would you like to unmute yourself and share?
Hey, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't know that I put my hand up. Okay. I did not have anything, but thank you guys so much for sharing everything. And Kathy, I wanted to let you know that I really liked your presentation.
Thank you so much, Kayla. Hank Duncan, I saw your hand up as well. Would you like to unmute yourself and share? Hank, did you? All right, we'll maybe go back to Hank. I'm not sure if he's having difficulties. Is Tyler still on? Tyler Ross. I wanted to go back to his question about Good Neighbor Authority, and I was hoping that he was still on. Are other folks familiar with Good Neighbor Authority? Okay, it doesn't look like he's still on.
And, you know, we've talked about good neighbor authority within the forestry resource policy group. And I know the State Foresters Association are real active in that, as well as the U.S. Forest Service. So if your area is not involved in that, the conservation districts, it would be great if our conservation districts could take a lead also in good neighbor authority.
Mhm. I completely agree with you, Gary. When it was only in place in, I believe, Colorado and Utah, prior to it being available nationally, it needed to get fixed. You know, I figured a couple thousand acres over several years of it being in place in those two states really just doesn't hardly even scratch the surface of what the problem was there. But they have done a lot to fix that legislation. And I think broadening it, just the fact that they had, you know, recognized tribal entities and how the different tribal projects and such, you know, that are already going on, you know, the sovereign land. I think it matters that you do cross-boundary work, and that good neighbor authority really is a tool that can help that happen. You have to have some good relationships to start with, and I've seen those probably more prevalent in the Southeast than I have in any other part of the country. And it just seems to lend itself that it might be super successful there to bring in, you know, work with, you know, the private land and then cross the border onto others.
Yeah, and I think Charles will agree with this. In the South, we've been more actively, I guess, responsible for helping our neighbor. And if a neighbor has a fire that gets out on their property, then we tend to go and help, you know, that. And then if there's a tornado, kind of like what Kathy was talking about, we don't wait for somebody to come in and tell us to go help our neighbors clean up their debris. And the same thing with other natural disasters. I'm looking forward to tomorrow with the Firewise program, because I think Firewise is probably kind of brought good neighbor authority in the South, where we all work together and become more wise about what it takes to keep fires from burning, you know, houses and structures.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thank you very much, Gary. Jenny Frank, I saw that you had your hand up. Would you like to share?
I did not realize I had my hand up, but no, I just appreciate the presenters and what they have brought so far, and looking forward to tomorrow. But I would say something that I've taken away from Kathy's presentation is just to, as the education coordinator for our conservation district, just to possibly start working on potential disaster preparation, contacts, and having that point of, you know, organization is a really good thing that I took from Kathy's presentation.
Thank you, Jenny. I agree. It was very good. And the stuff that she shared about having a plan, I was just, it's so important to have that. And if you've ever gone through an evacuation, or, you know, even in a small subdivision in Oklahoma City a couple of months ago, you know, they had a wind-driven fire that ended up, you know, it was a block of probably 30 homes that they, I think, had to get out of there very quickly. And, you know, so that being prepared, I think, is really, really critical. I will hear more tomorrow about community wildfire protection plans. And again, it's a tool that talks to fire, and it was defined in the Healthy Forest Restoration Act. But just the process of going through that community, you know, the development of that community plan it's really critical with disaster recovery, and is that you have this plan, but also you'll hear tomorrow about from FEMA, and I think Faith Berry may be on, or David and Candace can speak to the fact that, you know, the districts and need to be part of that local emergency management and pre-disaster hazard mitigation, you know, plan that you have in the county and in the state. For post-recovery funding eligibility, you have to be identified in it. I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of FEMA, but that's what I understand. And so if you're not engaged early, they can't engage you after the fact if you're not in that. So I think it's really important. We'll hear more about that tomorrow. Anything from the FEMA folks that are on that would want to share a little bit more about that today? David.
Yeah, this is David, and I don't want to go into too much because otherwise I have nothing to say tomorrow. But yeah, it's that interaction is very important, like she was saying, in the fact that if we don't have that open engagement up front, where you're not participating, we're not bringing those ideas to the table as a stakeholder or a participant even in these plans, then it does kind of put you behind the curve when you do have opportunities to do some actions for, you know, conservation or just mitigation in general, or anything that you could be doing. So it's a very good point that being involved is a very, very good thing. If there's specific questions, I'll be happy to take those, but don't get too much into it right now.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, David. It is really important to know the folks with your local emergency management. And in my 40+ year career with emergency preparedness and managing a dispatch center for 13 different entities, I can tell you that most of the time, I didn't talk to emergency management. I just say it. And I know that I was part of that dispatch structure and knew where they were and know how to call them. But I didn't really think that it was important to develop that relationship early. So I encourage folks to do that. You know, hindsight's 20/20. That's why I always look at it. But anyway, any other questions from folks? I'm not seeing any more hands up. Did I miss anything, Gary, Charles, Sabra? All right.
Everything seemed to go well. Like I said, I just wished that we could have heard John's presentation a whole lot better, because you know, I like I said, I was just on the tail end of this because I knew what Kathy was going to bring, and I knew what John was going to bring. They were the experts. I was just a little dummy down here on the farm. So,
Charles, I loved what you shared about this. I love how you have the plan from 1937. We learn a lot. We learn a lot from that type of information, I think.
Charles, that's the thing, I know there's a lot going on, and I had to jump off and go chair the NACD Legislative Committee, but there's a lot of things coming out of Washington and out of DC right now, talking about conservation and conserve, and that we need to conserve and we need to do things. But we've been conserving within NACD and our conservation districts for 75+ years. And, as we're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year, there's so much that's gone on behind us. And I think where we are today is to make sure that the people that have been behind us in the past, we can continue that into the future and make it even better. And I think coming through hurricanes and natural disasters in Mississippi, I have seen the great need to have plans. And as Charles was talking about, our conservation plan was drawn up, probably in the 30s, and it was the same thing on my family farm. And there's so much planning that has been going on for close to 80 years now. across our area, and we just need to make sure that those plans continue to be implemented and to continue to be utilized. I know growing up in the South, Charles, it seemed like somebody was burning the woods every spring, and it was just kind of a natural thing. We're continuing to burn the woods in the South, but we're doing it by prescribed burn and a controlled burn instead of just throwing a match out. And I'll never forget being in a vehicle with a gentleman, and we were riding through his woods, and he was trying to pledge this property for collateral for a loan. And as we were riding through the woods, I kept noticing he was striking a match. And as he rode through the woods, he was actually burning his woods as we were riding through them. And but it's done today with drip torches and a lot more detail, and making sure you've got the right wind and the right humidity, and you're doing a prescribed burn in a controlled manner instead of just throwing matches out.
For sure.
But it's all part of the plan. It's all part of that conservation plan.
I still know those folks that throw matches out or just take off on a four-wheeler. So.
Well, you know,
I don't do that though.
I hear you. Well, thanks so much for sharing, both you guys. I really appreciate that. And Keith, Owen, I know you, if I can call on you, you know, in this, while we've been working on the planning group for this, you know, you've talked a lot about some things that have happened in Oklahoma as well as Texas, so in the central part. Is there anything that you would want to share with the group about some of the things, touch on the same things that we talked about here today?
Sure. You know, Kathy talked about it. Charles talked about it. It's that the communication is the key. Don't wait until something happens to find your partners. Have those partners identified ahead of time. I know tomorrow, Lisa Knopf will talk about conservation districts, disaster management plans, having those in place, and that kind of thing. So again, don't want to steal her thunder. But having been a conservation district employee myself, I worked in Northeast Oklahoma for 10 years. Our disaster response plans were very important to us. Our conservation district directors addressed those or reviewed those several times a year. And this time of year, as a matter of fact, Ann and I were just messaging. We've had some folks have trouble getting on this session because we've had a line of serious thunderstorms that came across Oklahoma and Louisiana as we were on this. And you know, don't wait till the clouds show up and the sky gets dark to wonder whether or not your equipment is running, it's got gas in it, the fuel filters are changed, that kind of thing. Just like you don't wait until the trees are on fire to check to see if the chainsaw runs or, you know, the shovel's got a broken handle or not. Preparedness, forming those partnerships, making sure that your partners know that you are making sure that you know you can call on them and they know that you will is important. So.
Makes sense. All right. I see that Mike Zupko is on. Mike, are you able to share a little bit with us? Mike Zupko is the manager for the Wildland Fire Leadership Council, who Gary Wood talked a little bit about earlier, and showed the membership and also their national priorities. I was hoping he could maybe give us a little bit of an update on that America Burning WUI report. He's not unmuting. He might be on a boat somewhere. I wish we might. All right. I don't have anything else. Sabra, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Other than a thank you to all who presented today, and for, again, the opportunity to work with NACD and you, Ann, on this effort. I think a lot of great information has been shared, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow, where we can learn more about how districts can be engaged with our partners in forest management and in wind, water, and wildfire. So thank you all for your efforts and for your participation today.
Thank you, Sabra. Candace, do you have anything you'd like to share?
I think I'm good for today, Ann, but thank you for the chance to participate and listen in. I learned a lot this morning, and I'm looking forward to a great day tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, Candace. With that, I am not seeing any other questions or hands up for folks that might want to share. I hate cutting it off early if there's someone that wants to talk a little bit about what they're doing in their district. Not seeing any. I will go ahead and wrap this up. And first off, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I hope y'all join us tomorrow. We're doing an early start with 8:30 and just a coffee kind of session open to share. And I don't expect it to be recorded, but I look forward to it, and I hope to see you again. Look for a reminder email tomorrow as well with the links to the link to the session. It is a different link than the one that you used today, but it should be in the same reminder email that you got. With that, I'd like to thank all the folks behind the scenes. So Mike Beacom, I appreciate you running this Zoom and all the work that you do with the Forestry RPG and NACD. And Mary Scott, also back there behind the scenes, taking notes and keeping us on track and sending me messages. Really enjoyed all the sessions today. I, again, appreciate the planning committee. So Charles, I have really appreciated your guidance. Sabra and Gary Blair, Candace, Keith Owen, all of you. And I just want to say, I hope to continue to work with you past this summit and on the desk guide to make it a really good tool for all the conservation districts in the country. With that, did I miss anything, Mike?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.